to give us what we need. Hey!
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, you know, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power! Fight the power! Fight the power!
Welcome. KBLA Talk 1580. Welcome to KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. I'm honored to be guest hosting this month at this time during the drive. We've got a lot of very, very important news and a very, very important guest who will be joining us today. Hunter Biden, tragically addicted and now recovering from narcotics, lied on a gun application and cheated on his taxes by sheltering income from transactions in Ukraine. He will not serve any time. Hundreds of Americans invaded the capital of the United States to thwart the count of a presidential election. Donald Trump has promised not only to commute their sentences, but to pardon them. He's not just letting them out. He's saying that what they did was not a crime in the first place. While 77 million Americans who went to prison and jail await pardon and forgiveness, so they too can begin a new life in our life, liberty, and happiness system. I'm one of them. Their names are not mentioned in the media. They are your brothers, your sisters, your father, your mother, your neighbor, your children, your pastor, your bus driver, your barber, your beautician, your plumber, your construction worker. And their names are not even up for consideration. No one is mentioning their names in the media. The black, the brown, the poor, the Appalachian are beyond earthly forgiveness. They are asked to turn their attention to forgiveness of self and to Jesus. Only forgiveness in the next life is available to them. President of the United States is in Africa now. We lose credibility amongst our own if, in fact, we have to ask for pardons from Donald Trump. Everything we say or do, particularly in the public sphere, will be questioned because not only do you control our destiny, Mr. President, you control our political integrity. Of all of the great things that Joe Biden has done for our nation, he's been called liberal. I'm hoping that he grants pardons liberally to millions of black people, millions of brown people, and millions of poor people who deserve the same second chance at life that he recently, just yesterday, gave to his son. Mr. President, please hurry back from Africa. I don't know what you can do for Africans at this hour with just 50 days left in your administration with Congress on recess. Africa needed the last 4 years of your attention. What I do know is millions of African-American people who voted for you, campaigned for you, supported you, and Kamala need you to turn your attention to them before you leave office. My special guest today is Dr. Carlos Hill, an associate professor of African and African-American studies at the University of Oklahoma and founding director of the African-American Studies Distinguished Lecture Series. For Dr. Hill, Black History Month is an American mainstay, and Dr. Hill celebrates it every day 365 days a year, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Dr. Hill, welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580. Dr. Hill?
Yes, sir.
Welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580.
Thank you.
Your thoughts on the Hunter Biden pardon?
I love your commentary. I love your thoughts on how if you're going to do this for your son, this should be extended to the millions of people who are wrongly incarcerated behind sentences, non-violent drug sentences, many of them. And so you are so on and apt to say that. Where is your deeper compassion? We understand why, and this is not to say he shouldn't have compassion for his son, and he shouldn't do what he did to free his son, given the political targeting that happened under his administration. But at the same time, if you're going to do that, we need to understand how it manifests itself in terms of the people who have supported you and put you in office. What does your compassion look like there? And I'm glad that you're making that point on this day, that we're putting a lot of attention on this very issue.
You know, Dr. Hill, what worries me at this hour is this. The emphasis is on Hunter Biden's pardon and January 6th. Two white presidents, former President Trump and Joe Biden, we're talking about white forgiveness. His son, a group of people who criminally entered the capital of the United States, and there's just no mention of what the plan is for those of us who cannot afford a lawyer to lobby this process for Joe Biden's consideration.
Absolutely. And this is where you begin to think and you begin to wonder why this decision happened the way it happened, how it happened, because it doesn't appear to be a part of a larger plan, a part of a larger strategy, because, in fact, the president said only a few weeks ago that he wouldn't do this very thing. But only a few weeks later, he's doing the thing that he said he wouldn't do, and he would actually never do. And so there we have it. This feels to be a decision motivated not so much by politics or even by some sort of larger agenda, but something maybe out of a deep feeling of, I can't let this happen. And if I let this happen to my son, what kind of father I might be. I'm not sure what the logic was, but I don't think it fit into some sort of larger strategy or some sort of larger political goal to do things in support of people of color who, similar to his son, find themselves behind bars.
No matter how traitorous, racist, sexist, misogynistic, or criminal, his supporters still want President Trump to be pardoned. To be black in America, make a mistake in America, is unforgivable, unpardonable, a life sentence. To be born black or brown in America seems to be unforgivable blackness. Your work proves that out and bears that out. Am I right or wrong, Dr. Hill?
Well, I would say this. My work proves it, that there's evidence to show that in the United States of America, over our history, black people have been systematically discriminated against, and being discriminated against historically, not just since, not during slavery, but post-slavery, the most severe discrimination and lynching of black people, killing black people in public is what lynching is. We have seen the worst of America, but still, at the same time, we have held America to be its best self. And so I would say that we're still in that position. We are seeing the worst of America right now in a potential second Donald Trump presidency, but at the same time, we're being forced to also talk about and to represent the best of America, which is its democratic tradition, which we have done the most, Black people have done the most to make real for not just ourselves, but all Americans. And so we find ourselves constantly in this vice. And it is a role that I wish we have not had to play. But I would say the last thing that I would say is the discrimination we face, whether it's lynching, whether it's segregation, slavery, is because this country was never meant for us. This democracy was never meant for us, but Black people have made it for us. And that's the strength of our people. Dr. King, your father, all of our great leaders have helped us to understand that it wasn't for us, but we've made it ours. And that's the power of our tradition.
When we come forward, we'll be back with Dr. Carlos Hill. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580. Are you an entrepreneur looking to take your business to new heights? KBLA Talk 1580 is your partner in success. Every day, we celebrate and elevate Black-owned businesses across our community. Our KBLA SMB Marketplace currently features The Cookie Dip, Bad Ash Bakes, Hair Concoction, Higher Education Accreditation Consulting, LACC Radiology Technology Department, and Malik Books. Your business deserves to be heard. Let KBLA Talk 1580 amplify your voice and connect you with our powerful community of listeners. Email smb@kbla1580.com today. That's smb@kbla1580.com. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. Environmental justice is racial justice. Environmental justice is social justice. This is KBLA Talk 1580.
What if you could hear your favorite song for the first time again? Introducing the all-new, reimagined Nissan Kicks. With an available Bose Personal Plus sound system that uses speakers in the headrest to create a 360-degree listening experience. You've never heard anything like this. Reimagine your music and your drive. Experience the all-new, reimagined Nissan Kicks for yourself at nissanusa.com today.
Available feature. Bose is a registered trademark of the Bose Corporation.
We're thrilled to announce that the Dear Future Wifey podcast is now available on the Urban One Podcast Network. This show, hosted by Latiris R. Whitfield, explores the journey of discovering and rediscovering love and relationships. With over 500,000 subscribers on YouTube, Dear Future Wifey has become a prototype for discussions about love and relationships. Learn how to rediscover love, heal, and have faith in relationships. Go to urbanonepodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580. This is Jesse Jackson Jr. with Dr. Carlos Hill. I am particularly excited about this conversation that we're having, in part because Dr. Hill has a message, I believe, for our fathers to their sons at this hour. I mean, we're all witnessing the inconsistency of the government with respect to them pardoning themselves, but not even considering our children. Dr. Hill, your thoughts?
Yes, as I said before, I think we can put it in the context of fathers and sons and what a father would want to rightfully do if they have the power to protect their son from. And I would say, just commenting on what has happened to Hunter Biden, it has been a political witch hunt, a targeting, and a making sure that he's punished for things that, yes, maybe he did wrong, maybe he should be punished for, but the way in which it came about, I just don't agree with. And I think it is in that spirit that President Biden would have pardoned him. But at the same time, when they're in President Biden knowing the egregious travesties of justice that have happened under his watch and before, he has an opportunity to extend the same compassion. My honest hope is that in the days left in his presidency, we will see him doing more of what he's done, what he's made headlines for today.
You know, I certainly hope so. Marcus Garvey needs a pardon. Harold Washington, the former mayor of the city of Chicago, needs a pardon. Alcee Hastings, the late congressman from Florida, needs a pardon. Shaka Fatah, former congressman from Philadelphia. Corinne Brown from Florida needs a pardon. Warren Ballentine, talk show hosts, need a pardon. I mean, it is impossible to live as an African American in this country and not know someone who has been in the federal system, who has 49 days left to hear from the President of the United States. I mean, obviously, Martha Stewart needs a pardon. I've mentioned the names of some high-profile people, Dr. Hill, but they're bus drivers. They're Uber drivers. They're cab drivers. There are basic people who are cleaning hotels in Beverly Hills and downtown Los Angeles and in people's homes who have to check a box for a crime or an offense that they committed 10, 20, 30 years ago. And I speak about that from personal experience because when I was sentenced, I spent 30 months in a federal prison, but I've been a felon for 10 years. My judge never told me that my life was going to be a life of felonization. I did not agree to that when I pled guilty for what I had done wrong. And so in this hour, you know, when we get finished talking about Hunter Biden, we've talked about him for about a year and a half now since all of his cases came. At some point in time, the attention has to turn to the men and women in our community who we know catch the early bus and work the third shift. Your thoughts, Dr. Hill?
Well, Brother Jackson, you raised such a profound point that we all know someone who has been impacted by the criminal injustice system, and I know someone there in L.A. where this show is beamed to on a daily basis. The name that I want to mention to the audience who resides in Compton, California, is Fulton Washington, who was in federal prison for 21 years, and he gained clemency through President Obama in 2016, but he's yet to receive a pardon for a crime that he was convicted of that he did not do. And so he's yet another person that President Biden, in the next 49 days, as you so beautifully mentioned, also deserves some consideration for a full pardon for a crime that he spent time in a federal prison, 21 years in a federal prison, that the president right now his predecessor, President Obama, gave clemency to, but this president could give a pardon to. And so you're right, the same compassion that has been shown could be shown to people, black and brown people, and just people wrongly imprisoned. Right now, if we can, I think you're doing right now, trying to mobilize our community to assail him in his final days to do that. And I appreciate you and your voice on this.
The number to the White House is 202-456-1111. 202-456-1111. If you know someone who has been wrongfully convicted, if you know someone who paid in full their debt to society, if you are a father who has a son in this system or a mother who has a child in this system, and you watched Hunter Biden do absolutely no time for his gun offense, will do absolutely no time for his tax offense, you ought to call the White House right now at 202-456-1111, even on the highway. I know you're out there on the 5 and the 10. Listen, call the White House and say you'd like consideration for your son, your daughter, your husband, your mother, because what? Black lives matter, but their individuals' lives matter as well. Dr. Hill?
I think you're absolutely right that this is not a moment to, if this is a moment that we are shining a light on his, I would say, just gently flip-flopping on this to, at the end of the day, he only extends compassion or a pardon to his son, then it will, as I've heard many say today in various outlets, it will tarnish his presidency, because the very community that elected you, the very community that's disproportionately impacted by this issue, in your last 49 days, where you could have, you only extended that compassion to your son. This will be defining, and I hope his closest advocate supporters, or the people that in the White House now in these last few weeks are mobilizing to do. So I'll just mention there have been things happening in Tulsa connected to trying to create justice for, or at least a trail of justice for survivors. And so if that kind of justice work can happen, preparatory justice work can happen, why not for individuals who have been impacted by the criminal justice system wrongly, just like his son? Even though, and we can, and I think I appreciate how the tone in which you talked about this, because we need that radical, righteous and radical indignation. I have just been so poisoned and just so the ways in which Hunter Biden has been targeted by President Biden's opponents have soured me toward the ways in which this is really not about any kind of justice or accountability. This is really about politics and settling scores, and that's where as me as a father comes to the rescue, and I want to be clear about that, and I want those thoughts to be clear.
I put up a comparison post on social media on Facebook that shows the language that Joe Biden used to fully and completely and absolutely pardon Hunter Biden. And it is the exact same language that Gerald Ford used to fully, completely, and absolutely pardon Richard Nixon, therefore granting them a new life. And the way the pardon power actually works is it wipes out the offense when it's full, absolute, and complete, as if the offense never took place in the first case. That's really, really important to understand about the pardon power in the Constitution of the United States, and more specifically, a Supreme Court case called Ex parte Garland, 1866, 733, which is the case that guides the pardon and the pardon process. And so, Dr. Hill, we have so much to talk about. I think about the Biden Thanksgiving dinner where they sat around the table and discussed forgiveness for their son. And now we are heading into the Christmas season. I think every single one of our families deserve the same kind of celebration that the Biden family experienced during Thanksgiving. I'm Jesse Jackson, Jr. This is KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward, we'll be with Dr. Carlos Hill.
They don't really care about us.
The biggest names.
The best conversations.
You're riding with Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Tyreek Wynn with 4 things you should know from BIN News. The Chicago, Illinois black man is accused of killing a West Suburban Oak Park police officer in the line of duty. Jarrell Thomas faces several charges, including first-degree murder in the shooting death of Detective Alan Reddins, who is black. Community members are mourning the death of a civil rights pioneer in South Carolina. James Solomon Jr. was one of 3 black students who desegregated the University of South Carolina in 1963. He recently passed away at the age of 94. The city of Montgomery, Alabama is commemorating Rosa Parks and the anniversary of the historic Montgomery bus boycott. It's been 69 years since Parks refused to give up her seat on the bus to a white man. Joining in on the holiday festivities, Dairy Queen is bringing back 2 frozen desserts. DQ says the Peppermint Hot Cocoa Blizzard and DQ Frozen Hot Chocolate are now available. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 at BINnews.com.
Back on the 105 eastbound before Lakewood Boulevard, this wreck is blocking the left lane. Big delays off of the 405. It's also tough on the 405 northbound leaving Culver City from Venice Boulevard all the way to the 5 merge heading into Sylmar. Santa Monica loading up 10 eastbound. This is from 20th Street all the way to the 5 in Boyle Heights. Also, let's look at Diamond Bar with a wreck on the 60 eastbound before Grand. Everyone's off to the shoulder. Delays, however, backing up from Hacienda Boulevard. And Corona, 15 southbound, slowing down off of the 91 towards Temescal Canyon Road.
Hi, I'm Kyle, owner at Blindster.com. And right now, we're offering up to 50% off all our custom-made blinds, shades, and shutters during our Cyber Week sale. Don't miss out on some incredible deals. But hurry, sale ends December 10th. Blindster.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
When Clippers guard James Harden hit 6 3-pointers Sunday night against Denver, he joined Steph Curry as the only 2 players in NBA history with 3,000 threes. The 35-year-old Harden has dropped 3,004 3-pointers in his 15-year NBA career. Curry, in his 16th season, has the all-time record with 3,810. Harden has stepped up big time to lead the Clippers during Kawhi Leonard's absence. The Clippers are 13-9 while Kawhi tries to recover from his chronic knee condition. Harden is averaging 22 points and 8 assists. Harden is also one of only 4 NBA players to drop 40 points or more in 100 games. The other 3, Wilt Chamberlain, Kobe, and Michael Jordan. The Clippers are back in action Tuesday against Portland at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. Congrats to Jackson State football coach T.C. Taylor. Taylor was named SWAC Coach of the Year. Jackson State is 10-2. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah, yo, come on.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we fight the power every day.
Yeah, gotta give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need. Hey!
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, you know, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power! Fight the power!
Medicare open enrollment is here, and it's a time you can make changes to your health coverage. Yet, watch out for enrollment and marketing scams. Remember, Medicare will neither call you nor solicit your business. Guard your card. Never give out your Medicare number to strangers. Unsolicited calls, door-to-door visits, and emails are prohibited. Take your time. Don't feel pressured to make a quick decision. Report scams to our California Senior Medicare Patrol at 1-855-613-7080.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. Police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. My very special guest is Carlos Hill. Dr. Hill understands better than most the journey of African Americans from 1619 to the present. He wrote a book called Beyond the Rope, The Impact of Lynching on Black Culture and Memory. We've got 49 days left of Joe Biden, but there's this specter, Dr. Hill, over the country with the ascendancy of Donald Trump to the presidency of the United States. Recently, a group of students ran into a Beverly Hills high school or elementary school, I can't remember what it specifically was, threatening a teacher and threatening a class. And so this harkened back to days of difficulty for African Americans. Share with us some of that history that you know all too well. And do you see any hope?
I see plenty of hope. I see plenty of hope. I want to start with hope, ground us in hope, because our Black people's tradition is rooted in a deep hope and a deep faith. And that faith and that hope has always delivered us by and by. So I want to start with hope. But at the same time, when you talk about our long journey, our history, where we've been, I mentioned earlier, we were brought to this country as enslaved people. Indigenous people were dispossessed of their land. A country was created in the shadow of those things, in the grounded, not in the shadow of those things. Let me correct myself. It was created on the basis of those things. And that's the country, and that's the legacy that we have yet to really reconcile ourselves with, the enslavement of African American or African peoples and the dispossession of Native peoples. And then even after those things have happened, those same peoples have been discriminated against under a United States Constitution that guarantees them rights and of citizenship. And so I think, yes, I've come from a place of deep hope, but I'm also someone who understands, you mentioned Beyond the Rope, the history of lynching and racial violence, and how in our country we have a history of might makes right. Might makes right. And the history of lynching is the history of might makes right. And Donald Trump, as president, is the history of might makes right. You know, just because Donald Trump has figured out how to win 2 U.S. elections, now you mentioned absolution earlier. Now all of a sudden he is absolved from all the wrong he's done, even in the last 5 years with the insurrection. That too he's been absolved of because he can win an election. Might makes right. That's the lesson of the election, if there is one, that if you can win, you're good, right? No matter what you do, no matter what you threaten to do, no matter how you threaten to destroy democracy, if you can win, it is okay. Any crime you have committed, okay, if you can win a U.S. election. It becomes absolution for all crimes committed, even ones that you've been convicted of. And
I was reading.
Go, please.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, I was saying I was reading an interesting article.
You were reading.
I was reading a really interesting article the other day about right-wing forces camping out around Springfield, Ohio, and I thought about an article that you wrote on confronting the myth of objectivity with respect to what occurred in Tulsa. It just seems increasingly like the stage is being set for vigilante groups with African Americans and people of color who rightfully belong in the United States. Can you make a comparison for us before we have to come forward?
Well, I would just say briefly, what we saw after the election of President Obama was an increase in white hate groups, neo-Nazi groups. We've seen a similar rise with the election of President Trump in 2016, and I would predict we'll see a similar rise in 2024 because unlike in 2016 where he was pandering, now there are direct appeals to these groups, and I can see how they will monopolize and mobilize around what they believe to be now a political culture that supports their white supremacy and white hatred.
Are there comparisons that can be made between what some of the early signals and signs were for the uncomfortable reality that ended up creating the massacre in Tulsa?
Well, I think that in Tulsa we were in an era of lynching and lynching culture. And so the signals were everywhere of the violence. The signals were everywhere of the kind of terrorism. There was just no compassion for the terrorism that black people suffered. And that was the true tragedy of the lynching era, is that there was no place in America that black people had sanctuary, not in courts, not in places of worship, not in their home. So the lynching era was truly an era of no compassion for black people, black bodies, black lives. And so the phraseology of Black Lives Matter echoes from the past, right? We're trying to get people to be compassionate for those lives and those taken today. That's why we say Black Lives Matter. And that's why that slogan resonates not just in America, but all around across the world.
Is there any concern that you have that this administration could make good on its promises to really upend the Voting Rights Act, upend Brown versus the Board of Education?
There is no indication at this point that Donald Trump won't do anything that he said he would do, right? He is going to charge forward with these ridiculous appointments. He's going to charge forward with trying to deport millions of people. He's putting people in place who said that they would do those things. He's going to fight for their appointment. There's no indication that when they're in those positions, that they won't do those things, like abolish the Department of Education. So I think we should not think any threat that has been made during his campaign, even in in the last few days, is not something that won't be acted upon. But of course, with the politics of D.C. and the politics of the Republican Party shifting as they do, who's to say that Donald Trump won't change what he wants by the time he's inaugurated? So we have to even, leave open doubt for that.
I am more convinced than ever that we are looking at the beginning and early signs of a new Jim Crow. From the end of the American Civil War, we experienced first Reconstruction, 1865 to roughly 1877, 1896. Jim Crow with Plessy versus Ferguson through 1954, when Brown versus the Board of Education began second Reconstruction. The election of Donald Trump is the beginning, I believe, of second Jim Crow. When we come forward, Jesse Jackson Jr. and Dr. Carlos Hill on KBLA Talk 1580.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in more places that could expose you more to identity theft. But LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, our US-based restoration specialists will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Don't face drained accounts, fraudulent loans, or financial losses alone. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year with promo code NEWS. Visit lifelock.com. Terms apply.
So this new dose is... nope, that's not it. The price is nowhere to be found.
Mr. Green? Hi, it's all good. We've got this.
This is not just help from a Walgreens pharmacist.
Oh, new prescriptions. Cool. Let me check to see if these are the lowest cost options covered by your Medicare plan.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
This is someone supporting you every step of the way. Chat with a pharmacist today to find help saving. This is the human kind of help. Walgreens.
This season, Chevy brings classic pairings, cookies and milk, mistletoe and kisses, and your holiday plans and a new Chevy. Silverado 1500 gives you power and capability with 430 pound-feet of torque to haul your holiday tree. The Equinox EV and all-new Equinox, America's best compact SUV for new vehicle quality by J.D. Power, offer both confidence and style to see you through the holiday season. It's easy to see why Chevy makes everything better and brighter. Find your red tag. Get 0% APR financing for 36 months on select popular Chevy models when you finance with GM Financial. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive. Award based on 2024 models. For J.D. Power 2024 U.S. Industrial Quality Study Award information, visit jdpower.com/awards. Offer available on all 2025 Equinox and 2024 Equinox EV, Blazer EV, and Silverado EV models. Monthly payment is $27.78 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment is 26.8%. Must finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 1/2/24.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, home of the 2024 Climate Justice Campaign. KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you, when we fight, we win. The Youth Justice Coalition is challenging America's addiction to incarceration and discrimination. YJC works to dismantle policies leading to mass incarceration, law enforcement violence, and the school-to-prison pipeline. Their approach, transformative justice, community intervention, free LA high school, legal defense, and system monitoring. YJC promotes safety without relying on prisons. Their goal, prevent system contact and help people exit the system through direct action, advocacy, and education. Want to get involved or need help? Call 323-235-4243. That's 323-235-4243. Join YJC in creating change. When we fight, we win. KBLA Talk 1580, your voice for justice. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580, and I'm joined by Dr. Carlos Hill. And just before the break, I was making the case that we are looking at a second Jim Crow. I remember debating, Dr. Hill, with a close friend of mine, Dr. Peniel Joseph, who wrote a book on third Reconstruction. And I shared with Dr. Joseph, whose family are immigrants, that you can't just skip over Jim Crow and go to Reconstruction. Between first and second Reconstruction, there's this period, this very violent and nasty period known as Jim Crow. And the end of second Reconstruction, we should expect from that pattern of African-American history, that from Brown versus the Board of Education really to Biden to Kamala Harris, we've enjoyed and maybe even seen the pinnacle of second Reconstruction, that we may be with this Project 2025, with the rightward drift of the court, with the election of Donald Trump, with not having control of the Congress or the Senate of the United States, with some of the ludicrous appointments that he's making to the cabinet of his administration. I really feel like we are teetering on a second Jim Crow, and African Americans clearly know what that means. Your thoughts, Dr. Hill?
Yeah, and I think that it's really difficult to try to periodize the time that you're in. As a historian, I would just say that to try to think about what period right now do we compare to best. I think that's really difficult. But what I would say is the mood of our country is one that is very resemblant of moods that I've seen as a historian of this country, and particularly a historian of the 20th century, when this country has turned violent, right, toward Black people and people of color. It has been typically in moments of economic downturn, but also in moments where politicians very publicly use race, right, to create division, to race bait as a means to gain election, right? We saw that, and even we've talked about the extent to which Donald Trump used these quote-unquote Southern strategy to win this second election. And so what I can say and what I can see and feel is a really ugly move because of the ways in which race and race baiting, where there was Black people talking about Black jobs, talking about black people eating dogs, all the ways in which he played into racist stereotypes, propaganda from the past and even from recent days, recent years, using race to win an election. But the ultimate impact of that is that after the election, that same resentment that you created, that same hatred that you brewed up, plays itself out in terms of violence. And so you see a rise in hate groups that I mentioned earlier. And so that is what I fear mostly. I don't fear a second Jim Crow and trying to think about but I fear the violence, the racial violence against Black people, the increased police violence, because there's not going to be a president in the White House who cares and who will do anything, who will try to hold police officers accountable. That's my fear, given what I know most about this country, the ways in which when you have presidents in power like a Donald Trump, they're more interested in ruling, especially when it comes to Black people, right, and creating a democracy only for white people. And so what I fear is the rise in violence and the ways that we, as Black people and people of color, are going to have to fight to keep this country a democracy, as well as protect ourselves from the violence that I fear is to come under his administration.
I think you're absolutely right. I would be less than honest if I didn't tell you I wasn't afraid and that I was profoundly concerned with the historic trends that I think are in front of us. I remember when my father went south with William Bradford Reynolds, who was the head of the Civil Rights Division of Reagan's Justice Department, and he would stop local elections in Mississippi and Alabama because they were violating the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I don't see that in a Trump Justice Department. I don't see Section 2, Section 3, or Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act surviving under Donald Trump. I don't see from the federal government the aggressive enforcement that it takes to hold southern counties accountable and southern legislatures and states accountable to the progress and the gains of the Civil Rights Act of 64, the Voting Rights Act of 65, or even public accommodations legislation. We are segregated between blue states and red states. And even within blue states, we find ourselves in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. But when you go to Gettysburg and Lancaster and Lebanon, I mean, I didn't see any Kamala Harris signs in rural Pennsylvania, which we considered part of the Blue Wall. So the rhetoric has led to a division that I believe some of the forces of our historic opposition are easily planning to slide right through. Dr. Hill.
Absolutely. You asked me earlier, though, because we have really slid into the really depressing aspects of perhaps the presidency to come under a Donald Trump administration. But where's the hope? Where can we hope given, the realities of Donald Trump not holding, criminals accountable, injustices that will happen under his watch accountable, under his administration, just even his administration officials holding them accountable, right? We can expect that not to happen. And so what do we do, right, given the climate that we feel that's going to happen? I think in a true Ubuntu fashion, I'm going to mention the South African term that was utilized, I think, during the anti-apartheid movement, this idea that we must come together, we must understand what connects us so that we can fight, right, this attempt to rule and not to lead, right, this attempt to erode democracy, even beginning with not wanting his appointments to go through the normal process of approval of the Congress approving his appointments. And so at the very beginning, we're seeing his anti-democratic tendencies. This is what I fear is going to be not just a trend, but it's going to be the norm that he's going to try to create during his second term in office. And I think we have to be united in the true Ubuntu sense, fighting it tooth and nail at every point. And that, to me, is the hope that I mentioned earlier.
Again, 49 days left in Joe Biden's administration, and then the inauguration of Donald Trump, which is occurring on Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. On one side of town, we'll be commemorating Dr. King. On the other side of town, Washington, D.C., and MAGA will be having some kind of festive celebration for their takeover of the federal government. Dr. King concluded that going state by state would not resolve our problems. We needed the government of Lincoln to end slavery. We needed the government of Kennedy, and more specifically, the government of Johnson to advance critical legislation to hold the states accountable. State-centered federalism is as much of the problem as racism, for they use states' rights as the basis for justifying their legal racist behavior. Dr. Hill?
Yes, I mean, I'm definitely not a lawyer. My wife is a lawyer, but I am somewhat acquainted with the ways in which laws and legalese have been used to disenfranchise our people, and so I do fear, as you do, that there will be, as you mentioned earlier, and I didn't really follow up on that point, but I will now, a kind of new Jim Crow where just simply the protections that we've had, whether it is DEI policies, affirmative action, all the various things that have created some level of safeguard against the most blatant forms of racism, those protections that we have had for a generation, let's say, with various levels of effectiveness in terms of implementation, but nonetheless existing legally as protections under Donald Trump, we can expect those things to be eroded and if possible, eviscerated, because that has been the mood of the country in the states, and that's getting back to your state's point, in the states like Oklahoma, where I live, the mood is completely tilted toward Trump, Donald Trump, his agenda, and this idea of making America great again. And one way of doing that is whitewashing history and making everybody read the Bible, whether they're Christian or not, whether they're Muslim or not. You know, that's the goal.
Dr. Hill, we want to thank you for your scholarship. I use the scholarship of Dr. Carlos Hill to help guide me during uncertain times. You ought to go to Amazon and support his work. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. This is KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward, it will be with Dr. Quarterly.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Tyreek Wynn with 4 things you should know from BIN News. The Virginia Department of Corrections is denying recent reports that inmates have set themselves on fire at the Red Onion State Prison in Wise County. The Virginia Legislative Black Caucus announced that at least 12 inmates have set themselves on fire in response to the degrading and inhumane conditions at the prison. Disgraced rapper Sean Diddy Combs is facing yet another